All right, hello. I'm here with Akira Matsuda-san. And if you've never met Matsuda-san before, he is the organizer of both Asakusa.rb, a Tokyo-based Ruby meetup, as well as the lead organizer for the National RubyKaigi conference. And so I've known you for maybe 9 or 10 years now.
10 years, a decade.
And, a decade, and you've been super kind to invite me to Japanese events, and I've visited, Asakusa.rb several times. I spoke in 2020, right before COVID, at Oedo Ruby conference in Asakusa, and had a great experience.
That was a great talk.
It was my first and only talk in Japanese. I don't know if I'll do that again. And then, we've been to several Kaigi conferences from Kyoto to Fukuoka. And my first question is, you've turned RubyKaigi into a national traveling conference of many different cities.
Right.
Why did you do that? And what's the goal of moving the conference around? Because it's got to be more difficult to plan.
Yeah, actually I just got that idea from the Ruby Central's implementation of conferences. I mean, RubyConf and RailsConf. As a traveler from Japan to US, I could visit many different cities because of they do that traveling conference, and I like that. I like that style. I mean, I loved my experiences. I mean,
trying different foods and
yes. Actually, I've been at 1/3 of United States.
Wow.
Like nearly 20 states, I think.
That's a lot more than most Americans, I think.
It's just for attending RubyConf and RailsConf and regional Ruby conferences.
Yeah, and so when you do that in Japan, when you're selecting a new location, what criteria are you thinking about as being particularly important?
Okay, food and sake.
So you got number 1 and number 2.
That's the top priority. Yeah.
And then you have to find cities that are.
We need the city to have a actually big enough venue for the conference.
Yeah. So this year we're in Matsumoto, and what I've noticed is that maybe Matsumoto is on the smaller side of cities that you've had the conference at, where there's not a whole lot of large restaurants and super large hotels.
Right.
In the future, are you ready to announce where you're going to host the conference next year?
I will.
Is it still a secret?
It is a secret.
All right. So look at the blog, and when are you going to announce tomorrow?
Yes.
All right. So I look forward to hearing about it tomorrow. When you pick out these places as well, I'm curious. What's it like from a travel perspective? Because in the US, almost everyone has to fly everywhere. And so because most big cities in Japan are accessible by train, what's the experience like for Japanese developers who live in Japan traveling to the conference?
For Rubyists in Tokyo, they can go anywhere, I think. Accessible to any to northern prefectures or southern prefectures. It's approachable, but we have so many Ruby developers in a place called Shimane, which is where Mats lives.
And if you haven't heard of Shimane, you're not alone. It's in a really rural part of the country in the northwest.
Right, kind of. And so actually, for this conference, somebody from Shimane told me they took 8 hours to come here by train.
Wow. So it's not necessarily easy just because Japan's really connected by train.
Not really.
What you said resonated with me because I think I had never been to Fukuoka before your Fukuoka conference, and I had a great experience because I think the conference does a really good job of introducing culture as part of the conference event. So if somebody's coming to RubyKaigi for the first time, what might they expect in terms of activities and help from the conference to have a good experience?
Yeah, because Japan has such a long history, in comparison to United States. I'm sorry to say this, but
of course.
so we have very much different, very different cities, like everywhere in Japan. Like they have their own culture, their own food and drinks, or sometimes their own language, kind of. So I want you to enjoy the difference.
So, for example, what are some differences in Matsumoto that I should be looking for this week?
Food.
So in Japanese, there's a word meibutsu, which
meibutsu, yeah.
refers to famous goods or famous things. And every city, no matter how small, like when I lived in Nara Prefecture, the town I lived in, their meibutsu was socks, because they had the biggest sock factory in Japan for Kuzucha. So, and they were all very proud of the socks. In Matsumoto, what are some of the meibutsu?
Can I go back to something like soba or basashi?
Of course,
something
yeah.
to eat?
Yes, yeah. I mean, food is really important. So soba is famous in...
Yes, soba. It's a... I can't say that in English. The
buckwheat noodle?
Buckwheat noodle.
Yes.
That's it.
So it's like a gray color usually,
Right.
noodle. And then you also said basashi.
Basashi.
What's basashi?
Basashi means raw horse sashimi.
Okay, so it's sashimi, but horse meat.
Yes.
All right, so you've probably not had that if you haven't been to Japan before, because it's not usually served in America.
Right.
So I haven't had any basashi yet, but I did have a lot of soba last night at the first after party. Now, one thing, because this is a 3-day conference, is that I went to a party the night before the conference, and then after the first night of the conference. Today is day 2, and I'm going to go to another party tonight, and then there's also 2 parties tomorrow night. So every night has multiple parties and lots of social activities. And how did you pull off that many events in the community? How are there so many parties? And you make it really easy to sign up for them all from the main website. So what's the experience like for somebody coming to Kaigi for the first time to get to meet people and experience the community here?
Yeah, we wanted to like create that experience, but actually I copied that style from RubyConf. I mean, they used to have more like drink cups, sponsored drink cups. Yeah, in the past, like around 2010 or something.
Yeah, yeah. And
we had a Heroku drink cup. We had GitHub drink cup.
GitHub drink ups.
Like engineer drink cup.
Yeah.
Like things like that. And I liked it very much.
Yeah, me too. I had a lot of fun. And of course, whether you drink or don't drink, it's just great to have an event where people can come and get together.
Right. So I wanted to copy that to Japan. So in Japan, we didn't have that like habit. I wanted that, a Japanese version of that. So
Yeah.
I brought that culture into RubyKaigi like around 2013 or something.
Yeah, yeah.
And that started like 10 years ago.
Because one thing that I noticed right away coming to Kaigi is that in America, RubyConf and RailsConf feel very informal, like social events primarily. And so you introduce each other and meet random people in the hallway very frequently. But I feel like Japanese people typically treat the day part of the conference as more professional development and education and learning. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's harder. You already know everybody, right? Maybe, but like it was harder for me to meet people during the day at the conferences. But then, of course, in the evening, once people are done for the day and able to relax, it's a lot easier to make new friends at the conference, I think.
Interesting.
Different perspective, maybe. One of the things, too, that's different that I've noticed, and this is special this year, is in addition to sponsors, lots of corporate sponsors for the talks. There's like 19 booths, I think, of different companies. Each of them have really cool swag that they built. Like I got
actually 29.
29. Sorry, 29 booths. There's 29 booths. There were keynote sponsors. The keynote sponsors got little mini presentations before the keynote and mentioned after the keynote. Before most of the talks, there are actual video commercial, like really well-produced video commercials of sponsor companies.
Yeah, that's what we got during the COVID period.
Oh, I see. So because you were online with, you did RubyKaigi takeout.
Right.
right? And so it was you could pay and get just all the videos online.
Right. So we requested every sponsoring companies to like submit the promotion videos.
So what's it like to have so many sponsors for an event? Like, does it enable you to create a different kind of experience? Because frankly, American conferences, I'm used to having a lot of corporate sponsors, but these ones seem like very professional, very like, it definitely gives me the sense that RubyKaigi is one of the biggest tech events in Japan. How do you recruit sponsors for the conference, or do they all just come to you?
So we were kind of different from like some other big conferences. The difference is that we are a community. I mean, this event is run by like volunteers. We're not working for RubyKaigi. Our hobby,
Yeah.
So like we treat the sponsoring companies like some kind of friends, the community member. So we're not like doing some business.
So it's not really formal. In fact, last night I met a vice president of one of the major sponsors, NACL, and he used to be a Ruby committer a long time. Or maybe he's still a committer, but he doesn't really commit anymore. And so even the executives at a lot of the sponsors are, because of Ruby's long history, very intimately familiar with the Ruby community.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So yeah, we welcome every Ruby, every company using Ruby or Rails, and yeah, we actually earn some money, but we sometimes don't use all the money just for conference. We like deliver the money for some other regional Ruby.
Oh, really?
RubyKaigi.
Okay, so to support regional meetups and conferences as well.
Yeah, or Rails Girls.
And Rails Girls, which is really going strong still in Japan.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So one last question, which is just, obviously, when I think about RubyKaigi, I think of it having an amazingly welcoming environment for people coming from other countries and people who don't speak Japanese. For example, you provide professional translation services for every single Japanese language talk. What would you like to say to anyone who maybe isn't in Japan, who'd be interested in coming to RubyKaigi, about coming next year, what maybe they could look forward to?
So I think Japan is a very special country for Ruby users because, Japan is Ruby's Mecca, birthplace of the language.
So they should go on their pilgrimage to visit Japan.
Kind of, and Ruby is still actively developed in Japan. Not in Japan, but
Right.
most of the communities still are Japanese.
Yes.
So you can meet really, really core super committers who actually create your language.
Yeah.
Yeah, these like individuals, you can meet them in Japan, and some of them don't travel abroad.
I think you're totally right. I was recapping, so I'm writing a blog post of lots of the different talks, and every single talk was so-and-so gave a talk about how they improved Ruby 3.2 or this new parser for Ruby 3.3. And so you're actually seeing talks directly from the people who are making fundamental changes to the language.
Right.
And a lot of that news doesn't necessarily get overseas as quickly. So I feel like it's sort of an inside track to the future of what's happening in Ruby. I think that's a great idea. Great point.
So yeah, some people say RubyKaigi is very technical. Because RubyKaigi is too technical, some say I like RubyKaigi, or some say I don't like RubyKaigi. I don't mind, but that's not how we design the conference. That's just say, let's just say like, how do I say, like result of how we run the conference. So our basic design is that we want open source developers to be on stage, not professional open source software users, but I want them to talk about their software that they write themselves.
That they then share with the audience.
Right.
Yeah. And what I find too is that even the very technical talks here, like today, there was a presentation about implementing the increment operator ++ in MRI and C Ruby, and why ultimately, even though it's a very technical discussion of how the parser works and how you would add to the parser, the ultimate conclusion was because it would change backwards compatibility, you couldn't really include it in Ruby. And so it was really kind of a meta conversation about the trade-offs of language design and what maybe you wouldn't normally associate with a tech talk of the big picture of, it's more holistic, I think, than just simply saying this is a tech talk because it's only about technology. There's usually other messages that are very valuable about design and about building applications. So anyway, with that, thank you very much for your time today, Matsuda-san. I really look forward to hearing where we're going next year. And yeah, thanks for everything that you do for the community. Really appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
I'm going to keep coming as long as you invite me. So,
Thank you.
Thanks.